River Flow Sanctuary is a 60-minute performance of one piano piece. It came out in April 2013. It's one improvisation, and the album itself was recorded in one take. I did record 3 different versions of it, and this was the second time I recorded it. The first time, I had tried for years and years to recreate another 60-minute piano piece, but my life was busy and the creative juices weren't flowing in quite the way I wanted. So when this came, I was very, very excited. In the first take, there were maybe 5 or 10 minutes where it veered off in other places where it was moods I didn't necessarily want. But this second take had the serene mood that I was looking for. And then by the third time, I got so excited that I had a new piece that it started having a little bit more tension in the music than I wanted. So I went back to the second take and decided that that would be the one that I would release as an album.
Would you like to tell us something about each of the tracks?
Well, actually, I can't really, because it's one 60-minute piece. And so the tracks only existed after the fact. When I listened to the playback of the 60-minute piece, I wanted to put track numbers on there so that people could reference individual sections of the performance. So I listened to it in the baby's nursery and in my car and got to the point where I was very familiar with all of the parts of the performance and picked sections that had natural pauses or natural arcs to them and put markers at those points. And then I would listen to those individual stories and assigned names to them after the fact.
So how did you come up with the names for each of the sections?
It's interesting. At first, they wouldn't come. I was having a really hard time coming up with names, and everything I put on seemed rather stilted and forced and assigned on it, like you might imagine something coming after the fact. I did know that I sort of wanted something to do with nature or birds. I couldn't put my finger on why, other than I like nature and birds. I had one other musician who I trust a lot to listen to it, and I should say a little birdie told me that she had been naming improvisations for some other colleagues of ours and that she was really good at it. So I sent her the music and she came up with some beautiful, beautiful titles, only one of which actually ended up in there in the end. But her titles started making me think about what it was that I was trying to get across with the music. And once I finally realized the story in my life that was present at the time I recorded it, but I wasn't even really aware that I was. Once I recognized the story and the overall arc of it being a story of my pregnancy and the birthing of my second daughter and spending all of my time with a newborn in the 6 months prior to recording that music, once I realized that that was the case, then all of the titles flowed from that realization.
Catherine, while on the subject, can you tell us what the bird on the cover actually means to you?
I actually had a bird guide appear to me in a lot of my visualizations when I was preparing for the birth of my daughter. And I was in hypnobirthing classes at the time, and this vision of this bird came to me, and it was not one that the teacher was talking about, and it was not a bird I had ever seen before. But it was clear as day. This bird with a rust-colored red head came to me and was flying along beside me and was with me my whole pregnancy and during the birthing. And so when I realized that I wanted to talk about a bird, and Learning to Fly is one of the track titles, which came from a painting that I had sought out on the internet. I was trying to find a picture of this bird. Like I mentioned before, it was not one I'd ever seen in real life. And I spent many hours on the internet trying to find a picture of a bird like the one in the vision. And the closest thing I could find was a scarlet tanager, but that even didn't quite fit. But then I found this extraordinary painting by the artist Dorail. And she had this painting entitled Learning to Fly, and it was this bird flying through the air with a joyous girl with golden hair flying on his wing. And the sky was these beautiful multicolors. And I cried when I saw that painting because I knew it was the bird from the vision. I knew that I wanted to be joyous like the girl in that painting. and the multicolored sky was the journey I was going on. I mean, it was all very esoteric, but it really touched me deeply at the moment. And so when I wanted to do the album cover, I was inspired by that painting, and I asked my artist friend who was doing the cover for me, I asked her for a bird flying through the stars with ripples of water, and this cover is what she came up with. It turns out that the NASA space program allows the public to use images from the Hubble Space Telescope, and this image, in the background image, is from the Carina Nebula. Right. And it's from the Hubble Space Telescope. But it's the beautiful multicolored things that I had imagined.
Doesn't everything you've just said sum up to track 7, the word release?
Oh, absolutely. Release was a very big keyword in the hypnobirthing I was studying, and that was one of the big cue words. So as soon as you said it or anyone else in the room said it, every single muscle in your body would relax. And yeah. My daughter's almost 15 months now, and I still, if I even think that word in my mind, even now, I'm relaxing, thinking the word release.
Do you find as well from listeners that have listened to this album that they have their own thoughts on what the tracks represent for them?
Yeah, I haven't gotten any specific feedback on individual tracks, although I have had people mention some of their favorites. But I am getting the feedback of overall reaction to it. I had a friend tell me that she had had a pretty big surgery, and when she was recovering in the hospital, that she had loaded up her iPod with all of the relaxing music she could find, and she even was listening to talks on the Dalai Lama, by the Dalai Lama, and other music that had served her well through the years. And she said nothing was helping her relax, and her roommate was playing bad TV all day long. And she said she finally pulled out River Flow Sanctuary, and that it brought her to a great peaceful place that none of the other music had helped her. And I've gotten feedback like that from other people as well, that immediately it's bringing a sense of calm and peace, which is so gratifying to me, because that's where I wanted it to be. That's where I wanted the music to go and to take me and to take people who listen to it.
I mean, you seem to have struck on something here. I mean, I've looked at some of the reactions of people on the net when they've been listening to the album, and it's doing well in Zone, isn't it, as well? And it certainly seems to have captured people's imagination.
Yeah, well, an artist can't ask for anything more than that. That's a true blessing and compliment for people to be touched by the music.
And I do like the bird references. I mean, you have several of them on here, Bluebirds of Happiness. Found that an interesting track, personally.
Oh, yeah. I gave that particular track that title. That particular track is the opening track. There's a 2-minute prelude. Yeah. And then that's when I started really fleshing out a melody that would carry on throughout the 60 minutes. And it's truly a place of happiness. And it's truly me sort of saying, oh, here's this music, and let's lay it out, and let's be here, let's be in this moment, and let's enjoy this time. I gave it that name because it made me think of the time when my daughter was 10 days old, a newborn on my lap, and I was sitting in my living room looking out the back window and watching bluebirds build a nest in the box in my backyard. And It was a glorious day, and the daffodils were probably blooming. I don't have that particular thought in my memory, but I'm sure they were. And just watching the birds fly in and out of that bird box was so extraordinary. And then I do have one of those Bluebird of Happiness glass sculptures that were so wildly popular a while ago, and my grandmother had one on her shelf in her house, and I have it now in my china cabinet, and it just reminds me of my grandmother and all the warm memories of her Sunday meals that she cooked for the family.
And even on to the next one, on track 3, we have On My Wing. And it's almost like you're not only describing the process that you've talked about already, but you're almost describing in music and in words the album cover itself.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Because it's then entering a place of security.
Yeah.
And being on the wing of the bird guide.
Which would lead me to thinking that track 6, Be Still My Soul, is that time when we just want you to be calm and, breathe before the release of track 7.
Yes.
Because it does seem to follow a lovely pattern. I think there was one track on the album I noticed that was over 11 minutes long.
Yes.
Tell me about that one.
That was Learning to Fly.
Yeah, that is learning to fly.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, again, these aren't things that I thought about as I was creating the music. It's only after the fact, listening to the music and trying to find the natural pause points or the natural places where the music turns a little bit. And in that particular one, there was no place. It developed so slowly. I believe it starts right at the half point of the piece at 30 minutes. And it's very sparse at the beginning of that. And it builds very, very slowly. And by the end is much more dense chords and a little bit more of the melody coming back. And so I knew I wanted the title Learning to Fly somewhere in the album because that painting was so important to me. And this one seemed to be a nice place to put it because of that development over such a long period of time.
Is it almost a case of channeling the music and just knowing when to stop and just when you need to pause?
Yes, but I don't think about it on a conscious level in that way. For me, it's just sitting at the piano and playing. And the thing that I think about the most when I'm doing something like this is remembering to breathe and to bring myself back to the present moment.
I can concur with that completely. I do that when I'm writing. Sometimes I will actually forget to breathe.
When you're in the flow and it's just coming and you're not necessarily sure where it's coming from. You have to breathe, otherwise you create these walls that will eventually stop the flow.
How can your fans and listeners new to you find out more about you?
Oh, sure. Well, of course, on my website, CatherineMarieCharlton.com, and then popular social media sites. My piano page is CMC Riverdawn is my tag on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. It's CMC as in Catherine Marie Charlton and Riverdawn, because that was the name of such a seminal album for me from 2001, so it's an easy way to find me. CMC Riverdawn. And I'm on Twitter a lot, actually. It's crazy how much you can talk with people from all over the place now that we never could do before. It's really fascinating.